I thought our 15-year marriage was unbreakable until I heard her whisper those words on the phone. I miss you too. I wish last night didn't have to end. That night, I didn't confront her. I just vanished. No warning, no goodbye. Now she's desperately searching for me, drowning in the consequences of her betrayal. But this time, my silence speaks louder than any accusation ever could. My name is Miles Reed. I'm 40 years old, and until 6 months ago, I was living what I thought was a good life in Portland. I developed educational programs for children with special needs, work that gave me purpose and satisfaction. I had a beautiful home in the suburbs, a wife I'd loved since college, and what I believed was a rock-solid marriage. The first hint that something was wrong came so subtly I almost missed it. Natalie started coming home later from her office. Not dramatically late, just 30 minutes here, an hour there. Always with a reasonable explanation. Client meeting ran long. Traffic was terrible. Had to finish a proposal. I believed her. Why wouldn't I? We'd been married 15 years. Trust was our foundation. Then came the phone thing. Natalie had always been casual with her phone, leaving it on tables, not bothering with passwords. Suddenly, it was glued to her hand. She'd flip it face down whenever I walked into the room. The familiar ping of text would send her scurrying to another room to answer. Just work stuff, she'd say with a wave of her hand when I'd raise an eyebrow. One evening in March, I came home earlier than expected. As I turned my key in the lock, I heard it. Natalie's laughter. Not just any laugh, but that full, unrestrained sound I hadn't heard in months. Maybe years. The kind of laugh she used to have just for me. I stepped into our kitchen silently, and there she was, phone pressed to her ear, leaning against the counter. Her whole face was lit up in a way I hadn't seen in too long. "That's insane," she was saying, her voice warm with intimacy. "You can't possibly." Then she saw me. The transformation was instant. Her smile vanished, her body stiffened, and she quickly said, "I've got to go. Talk later." "Who was that?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral as I set down my laptop bag. "Oh," she hesitated, just a microsecond too long. "Just Jen from work. We're planning the spring fundraiser." I nodded and moved toward the refrigerator, but something cold had settled in my stomach. Because Natalie and I had been to dinner with Jen and her husband just last weekend, and Jen had mentioned she was leaving for a 2-week vacation in Hawaii. Started yesterday. That night, lying beside her in bed, I stared at the ceiling fan while Natalie scrolled through her phone, angled carefully away from me. 15 years together, and suddenly I felt like I was sleeping next to a stranger. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, I started paying attention. And what I saw in the coming weeks only confirmed what my gut already knew. I was losing my wife. The question was, had I already lost her? Over the next few weeks, I became a detective in my own home. Not something I'm proud of, but when your gut tells you something's wrong, eventually you have to listen. Natalie's behavior shifted in subtle ways that only a husband of 15 years would notice. New clothes appeared in her closet. Nothing flashy, just a bit more stylish than her usual choices. She started wearing makeup on ordinary weekdays. Her showers became longer. And there were the unexplained absences, networking events, team dinners, client meetings that kept stretching later into the evening. I told myself I was being paranoid. Maybe she was just trying to move up at work. Maybe this was some kind of midlife renaissance. But the knot in my stomach kept tightening. The moment of truth came on a Thursday. I had a morning meeting canceled and decided to swing by home to grab some materials I'd forgotten. As I pulled into our driveway around 10 a.m., I noticed Natalie's car. She should have been at work. I entered quietly, hearing her voice coming from our bedroom upstairs. She was on the phone, speaking in that soft, intimate tone I used to know so well. "I miss you too," she was saying, her voice barely above a whisper. "I know. I wish yesterday didn't have to end either." I froze in the hallway, my heart pounding in my ears. "It's getting harder to make excuses," she continued. "He's starting to ask questions. No, I don't think he suspects anything specific, but..." I backed away silently, returned to my car, and sat there, hands gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. The evidence I'd been dreading was now irrefutable. My wife was having an affair. That night, I watched her prepare dinner, chatting about her day as if nothing was wrong. She mentioned a budget meeting, client calls, a complete fabrication of a day I now knew she hadn't spent at work. The ease with which she lied stunned me. How long had this been going on? How many other conversations have been complete fiction? "You're quiet tonight," she said, placing a glass of wine in front of me. I looked up at her, this woman I'd share my life with, and felt a strange sense of calm. "Just tired. Big project deadline coming up." She nodded, seemingly relieved I wasn't asking questions. "You work too hard." I nearly laughed at the irony. Instead, I took a sip of wine and decided to wait. To watch. To gather more information before making my next move. 2 days later, I had my final confirmation. Natalie was in the shower when her phone lit up on the kitchen counter. I'd never checked her phone before. Trust had always been our thing. But that trust was already shattered, wasn't it? The message preview on the screen read, "Last night was incredible. Can't wait to see you again." The sender's name was listed as Victor S. Victor Sloan, the app developer who'd spoken at Natalie's company retreat 3 months ago. The one she'd mentioned was so interesting and revolutionary in mental health technology. The one whose company had apparently required so many consultation meetings lately. In that moment, something inside me just shut down. 15 years of marriage, and this was how it ended. Not with a bang, but with a text message. For a week after discovering Victor's message, I went through the motions of normal life. I got up, went to work, came home, ate dinner with my wife, all while carrying the weight of her betrayal. The strangest part? I wasn't angry, just hollow, like someone had scooped out everything inside me and left an empty shell. At work, I threw myself into finalizing a new program for children with autism, creating something meaningful while my personal life felt like the only thing keeping me sane. My colleague Dexter noticed something was off, but I brushed off his concerns with vague excuses about being tired. At home, I watched Natalie with new eyes. The way she'd check her phone when she thought I wasn't looking. How she'd suddenly need to run errands at odd hours. The careful way she maintained her alibi with fabricated work stories. It was like living with a skilled actress rather than the woman I'd married. The decision itself came suddenly. I was sitting in my office late one evening, staring at a photo on my desk. Natalie and me in Maui for our 10th anniversary, 5 years ago. We looked happy. Maybe we were. But that man in the photo, the one with his arm around his wife, smiling like he had everything figured out, he was gone now, and I couldn't pretend to be him anymore. That night, I made my plan. Not in anger, not in haste, but with a clarity I hadn't felt in months. I'd wait for the right moment, pack what mattered, and just leave. No confrontation, no ultimatums, no tearful accusations. Just gone. The opportunity came 3 days later. Natalie mentioned she had a team dinner that would run late. The lie rolled off her tongue so easily now that she didn't even bother making it convincing. "No problem," I said, kissing her cheek as she headed out the door. "I've got some work to catch up on anyway." As soon as her car pulled away, I moved with purpose. I'd already withdrawn a reasonable amount of cash from our joint account over the past few days. Not enough to raise suspicions, but enough to get by. I'd secured a short-term rental in Seattle under just my first name. I'd even spoken with a lawyer, though I hadn't filed anything yet. I packed efficiently, clothes, important documents, a few personal items I couldn't bear to leave behind. My grandfather's watch, the journal I'd kept for years, the photo albums from before our marriage, when my life was still my own. I left my wedding ring on the dresser with a note that contained just 3 words, "I know everything." Then I walked out, closed the door behind me, and drove away from 15 years of marriage without looking back. In the rearview mirror, our house grew smaller until it disappeared entirely. Ahead lay uncertainty, but also something I hadn't felt in too long, freedom. I drove north from Portland with no music, no podcasts, just the sound of rain on the windshield and my own thoughts for company. Every mile put more distance between me and the life I'd abandoned, yet I felt no urge to turn back. That surprised me. 15 years of marriage, ended by my choice, and all I felt was a profound sense of relief. I checked into a nondescript hotel outside Seattle using cash, and my first name only. The room was basic but clean, a temporary way station while I figured out my next move. I powered off my phone, knowing it would already be blowing up with notifications. That first night alone was strange. The silence felt both deafening and liberating. I lay on the hotel bed, staring at the ceiling, waiting for the grief or rage to hit. Instead, I slept better than I had in months. Morning brought clarity. I turned on my phone long enough to send 2 emails. One to my boss requesting an immediate leave of absence for personal reasons, and another to Dexter, asking him to take over my current projects. Then I turned it off again before checking any messages for Natalie. I wasn't ready to read her excuses or accusations. Not yet. After breakfast, I drove to a small cafe with free Wi-Fi and set up my laptop. I needed to make arrangements for a more permanent place to stay. 3 hours and several cups of coffee later, I'd secured a month-to-month rental in a quiet neighborhood in Bellevue and transferred money into my new private account. It wasn't until my 3rd day away that I finally checked my messages. The progression was exactly what I'd expected. First confusion. Where are you? What's going on? Then anger. Is this some kind of joke? You can't just disappear like this. Followed by panic. Miles, please, just tell me you're okay. I'm worried sick. And finally, the beginning of understanding. I found your ring. Please talk to me. Whatever you think you know, we can work through this. 37 missed calls. 23 text messages. 9 voicemails. Each one more desperate than the last. I'd left in silence. And now she was consumed by regret, frantically searching for me, for answers, for absolution I had no intention of giving. It was cruel, perhaps, but there was a certain justice in it. For months, she'd lived a double life while I remained oblivious. Now our roles were reversed. She was the one left in the dark, desperate for information I controlled. I deleted the messages without responding to any of them. Then I blocked her number. That evening, I walked through my new neighborhood, watching families through lit windows, couples walking dogs, normal lives unfolding while mine had derailed. Yet strangely, I didn't feel derailed. I felt reset, like I'd been given a rare chance to restart. As the sun set over the Seattle skyline in the distance, I made a promise to myself. This wouldn't break me. I would rebuild, reinvent, reclaim the man I'd been before I lost myself in a marriage that had died long before I walked out the door. 2 weeks into my new life in Bellevue, I established a routine. Morning runs along Lake Washington, remote work from my Portland office, and evenings spent rediscovering hobbies I'd abandoned years ago. I'd started playing guitar again, something I hadn't done since before meeting Natalie. My boss had been surprisingly understanding about my sudden relocation. Family emergency. I'd explained vaguely during our video call. I need to be in Seattle for a while. She nodded, concerned but practical. Your work has always been exceptional, Miles. As long as the programs stay on track, I don't care where you're located. I found a small office space to rent by the month. A converted Victorian house where various professionals shared common areas but had private rooms for work. The change of scenery sparked new ideas for my educational programs. Sometimes a different perspective was all you needed. On my 3rd Saturday in Bellevue, I ventured into a small bookstore that specialized in educational resources. I was browsing through a section on progressive teaching methods when a voice interrupted my thoughts. That's an excellent book, but if you're interested in sensory processing techniques, there's a better one over here. I turned to find a woman pointing to a different shelf. Autumn Parks, according to her name tag, was apparently the store's owner. She had intelligent eyes and a no-nonsense manner that immediately put me at ease. Thanks, I said, following her recommendation. I'm developing programs for children with special needs. Really, her interest seemed genuine. I taught special education for 12 years before opening this place. What's your focus? What started as a professional conversation over coffee in her shop's reading nook turned into dinner at a nearby restaurant. I found myself talking more than I had in months. About work, ideas, books. Not about Natalie or my marriage or why I'd suddenly relocated to Seattle. Autumn didn't pry. It wasn't a date. Just 2 education professionals connecting. But walking back to my apartment afterward, I realized something. For the entire evening, I hadn't once thought about what I'd left behind. I'd been completely present, engaged in meaningful conversation that had nothing to do with deception or betrayal. That night, I received an email from Dexter. The subject line made my stomach drop. You should know. Natalie's been calling everyone, he wrote. She came to the office yesterday looking for you. Seemed pretty desperate. Wouldn't say what happened, just that she needs to talk to you urgently. I didn't tell her anything, but thought you should know she's actively searching. Take care, man. I closed my laptop without responding. Let her search. Let her wonder. Let her feel a fraction of the disorientation I'd felt discovering her betrayal. For the first time in my adult life, I was building something that was entirely mine, a life uncomplicated by lies. I wasn't about to let her pull me back into the wreckage of what we'd once had. 1 month into my new life, I felt myself healing. I'd settled into a productive routine in Bellevue. My work was thriving with fresh perspective, and I'd even started meeting people. Nothing romantic, just connections that reminded me I could exist independently from the identity of Natalie's husband. Then came the phone call that shattered my carefully constructed calm. "Miles, it's Dexter. Look, man, I didn't want to call, but this is getting out of hand." I tensed, sitting down at my kitchen counter. "What's happening?" "Natalie showed up at my house last night, at 11 o'clock. Julie was not thrilled." He paused. "She's spiraling, man. Said she's contacted everyone she can think of, hired some kind of private investigator, the works. She's determined to find you." My stomach tightened. "What did you tell her?" "Nothing specific. But Miles, she's not doing well. She's lost weight. Looks like she hasn't slept in weeks. I'm not saying you should talk to her. Just be aware she's actively searching." After hanging up, I paced my apartment, uneasy. I'd expected her to be upset, even desperate. But hiring a PI? That was extreme. What was her endgame here? To apologize? To manipulate me into returning? To serve me divorce papers? Whatever it was, I wasn't ready to face her. Not yet. Maybe not ever. 2 days later, I received an email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line, "I know where you are." My heart raced as I opened it, expecting threats or ultimatums from Natalie. Instead, it was from Victor Sloan, the man who'd helped destroy my marriage. "I don't know you," he wrote, "but I know what you think happened. You're wrong. Natalie isn't who you think. She deserves a chance to explain. She's destroying herself looking for you." I deleted the email immediately, anger burning like acid in my throat. The audacity, her lover presuming to judge me, to advocate for her. Was this their strategy? Good cop, bad cop. That evening, I took extra precautions, changed my routine, varied my commute, paid attention to unfamiliar cars. I wasn't paranoid, just practical. I'd left for a reason. If Natalie had indeed hired someone to find me, I needed to stay one step ahead. Then came the blog post. A colleague forwarded it to me, a lengthy entry on Natalie's previously dormant professional blog. It didn't mention me by name, but the message was clear. She was publicly declaring her regret, her desperation to make amends with someone she'd deeply wronged. It was a digital bottle in the ocean, hoping to reach me. Does she think I'm monitoring her social media? I asked Autumn over coffee that weekend, finally confiding some of my situation to my new friend. "It's not about logic," Autumn replied thoughtfully. "It's about exhausting every avenue. When you're desperate enough, you'll try anything." I considered this, remembering how level-headed Natalie had always been. To see her unraveling so publicly, throwing dignity aside in her search for me, it didn't align with the woman I thought I knew. But then, neither did her affair. That night, I changed my email address and phone number. Not out of fear, but from a growing determination to protect the new life I was building. Natalie had made her choices months ago, when she decided our vows were negotiable. I was making mine now. Let her search. Let her regret. My silence would speak volumes that words never could. 2 months into my new life, I let my guard down. The constant vigilance was exhausting, and I'd begun to believe Natalie had finally accepted my silence and moved on. I settled into a comfortable routine. Work at the co-working space, occasional dinners with Autumn to discuss educational theories, weekends exploring the Pacific Northwest. Then one evening, I returned to my apartment building to find Natalie sitting in the lobby. My steps faltered, adrenaline surging through my system. She looked different, thinner, paler, dark circles under her eyes. For a moment, we just stared at each other. "How did you find me?" I finally asked, my voice steadier than I expected. She stood, hands twisting together. "It doesn't matter. Miles, please, we need to talk." "No," I said simply. "We don't." I moved toward the elevator, but she stepped in my path. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking for. 5 minutes after 15 years. Part of me wanted to walk away, to maintain the silence that had become my most effective weapon. But another part recognized that this confrontation was inevitable. Better here, in the public lobby, than having her continue to chase me. 5 minutes. I agreed, gesturing to a small seating area away from the entrance. That's it. We sat, maintaining careful distance between us. Up close, I could see just how much toll the past months had taken on her. The woman across from me barely resembled the confident, vibrant Natalie I'd married. "What you think happened with Victor?" she began. I cut her off. "Don't. I know exactly what happened. I saw the messages. I heard the calls. It wasn't what it looked like," she insisted, leaning forward. "It was a mistake, yes, but not what you think. It never got physical. It was just a tension when I felt invisible in our marriage. I ended it the day you left. It meant nothing." I laughed, a short, harsh sound. "And that's supposed to make it better? That you risked our entire marriage for nothing?" Her eyes filled with tears. "I've been going crazy trying to find you. I've seen a therapist, trying to understand why I did something so stupid. I miss you. Our home feels empty without you." "It's not our home anymore," I said quietly. "It's yours. Just like the lies were yours. The choices were yours. And now the consequences are yours too. Miles, please." She reached for my hand, but I pulled back. "Can we try again? Go to counseling? I'll do anything." I stood, feeling strangely calm. "Your 5 minutes are up. Don't come here again. Any communication can go through the lawyers." As I walked to the elevator, she called after me, her voice breaking. "I still love you." I paused, looking back at the woman who'd once been my entire world. "You don't destroy people you love, Natalie. You just don't." The elevator doors closed on her stricken face, and I exhaled slowly, surprised by the absence of pain. I'd expected this confrontation to break me open again, to undo the healing of the past months. Instead, I felt only certainty that I was on the right path, away from her, forward into a life uncomplicated by betrayal. A week after Natalie appeared in my apartment, I found a letter in my mailbox. No return address, but I recognized her handwriting immediately. I almost threw it away unopened, but something stopped me. Perhaps it was the finality of it, a physical manifestation of what we'd become to each other, strangers communicating through paper rather than the intimacy we'd once shared. I brought it inside, but didn't open it right away. Instead, I made dinner, answered emails, called my mother, normal life tasks that reminded me I was still moving forward. Only after darkness fell did I finally tear open the envelope. "Miles," she began, "I know you don't want to hear from me, and after our meeting, I understand why. But there are things I need to say, even if you never respond." I settled into my armchair, steeling myself for manipulation, for emotional warfare. Instead, what followed surprised me. I won't make excuses for what I did. It was selfish, destructive, and unforgivable. I betrayed not just our vows, but the foundation of respect we built over 15 years. You deserve better. You still do. The affair with Victor was never physical, but that doesn't matter. The emotional betrayal was real. I lied to you repeatedly, created elaborate deceptions, and violated your trust in the worst way possible. There's no justification for that. Her honesty was disarming. For the first time since discovering her messages, I felt something crack in the wall I'd built around my emotions. I've been in therapy, trying to understand why I risked everything for something so empty. The answers aren't simple, but they're also not your burden. I just want you to know I'm facing what I did, not running from it. You were right to leave, right to protect yourself with silence. The pain of searching for you, of living with the uncertainty of where you were or if you were okay. It's been excruciating, but it's nothing compared to what you must have felt discovering my betrayal. I set the letter down, surprised to find my hands shaking slightly. This wasn't the desperate pleading I'd expected, nor the blame shifting I'd feared. This was accountability. I'm not asking for reconciliation. I don't have that right. I've filed divorce papers and included a settlement offer that gives you more than half of everything. It's waiting with my lawyer whenever you're ready. What I am asking is that someday, when the pain isn't so raw, you might find it in your heart to believe one thing, that despite my inexcusable actions, I did love you. I still do. I just forgot how to show it, how to honor it, how to be worthy of the man you are. Be happy, Miles. You deserve that more than anyone I've known. With regret and respect, Natalie. I folded the letter carefully and returned it to its envelope. A complex emotion I couldn't immediately name washed over me. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps the distant cousin of understanding. The letter offered no excuses, sought no reconciliation, just expressed a regret that finally rang true. That night, I wrote a brief email to my lawyer, instructing him to proceed with the divorce and to review Natalie's settlement offer. It wasn't absolution, but it was closure, the final acknowledgement that what had once been was now officially ending. As I lay in bed, I realized the emotion I'd felt reading her letter wasn't just understanding. It was freedom, the final release from wondering if I'd been too harsh, too abrupt in my departure. Her words had confirmed what my instincts had told me all along. Walking away had been the right choice, the necessary choice, the only choice that preserved my dignity and self-respect. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new beginnings unburdened by old betrayals. For the first time since leaving Portland, I felt truly ready to embrace them. 6 months after walking away from my marriage, I signed the final divorce papers in my lawyer's Seattle office. There was no ceremony to the moment, no dramatic flourish, just a quiet scratch of pen on paper, closing one chapter of my life and confirming the beginning of another. "Congratulations," my lawyer said, shaking my hand. "The settlement is exceptionally favorable." She didn't contest anything. I nodded, feeling a strange mix of emotions. Not regret. I made peace with my decision long ago, but a quiet acknowledgement of what once was and would never be again. Outside, spring had arrived in Seattle, cherry blossoms dotting the landscape with delicate pink. I walked through a nearby park, taking in the renewal happening around me, a fitting backdrop for my own rebirth. My phone buzzed with a text from Autumn. How did it go? Over the past months, our professional relationship had gradually evolved into something more personal. We'd taken things slowly, both of us carrying baggage from past relationships. But there was a comfort between us, an easy understanding that felt refreshingly honest after years of mounting deceptions. "It's done," I replied. "Meeting you for dinner still?" "Absolutely. I have news." That evening at a small bistro overlooking Lake Washington, Autumn shared her exciting development, a grant to develop specialized educational materials for children with sensory processing disorders, something we discussed extensively during our professional conversations. "I want you on the team," she said, eyes bright with enthusiasm. "Your programming expertise with my educational background. We could create something revolutionary." As she outlined her vision, I felt genuine excitement spark within me, not just for the project, but for the future stretching before us. Autumn had never demanded explanations about my past. She'd simply accepted my gradual revelations with compassion and without judgment. "What do you think?" she asked, finishing her proposal. I looked at her. Intelligent, passionate, straightforward. Everything about our connection had been built on honesty from the start. "I think it's brilliant," I said. "Count me in." Later, walking along the waterfront under a canopy of stars, Autumn slipped her hand into mine. It was a small gesture, but significant, the first time we'd crossed that physical boundary. "You seem lighter tonight," she observed. I considered this. I realized. It feels like I can finally look forward without checking over my shoulder. The divorce papers hadn't just ended my marriage. They'd officially released me from the limbo of the past 6 months. Whatever came next would be built on my terms, with clear vision and honest foundations. 1 year after walking out of my home in Portland, I stood in the doorway of my new house in Seattle's Greenwood neighborhood, watching Autumn hang a painting in the living room. The modest craftsman bungalow was a far cry from the sleek modern home I'd shared with Natalie, but it felt more authentically mine than that house ever had. "What do you think?" Autumn asked, stepping back to assess the artwork. A vibrant piece created by one of her former students, a nonverbal child with remarkable artistic talent. "It's perfect," I said, meaning it. The painting, like everything in this new life, had been chosen with intention rather than obligation to someone else's preferences. Our educational software company had taken off beyond our expectations. The program we developed for children with sensory processing disorders was being implemented in schools across 3 states, with more showing interest daily. The work gave me purpose, a way to channel my skills into something genuinely meaningful. My phone buzzed with a text from Dexter. "In town next week. Dinner." We'd maintained our friendship despite the distance, one of the few connections to my old life I'd chosen to preserve. He'd been supportive without being intrusive, respectful of my boundaries, even as he occasionally updated me on Portland happenings. Natalie had moved to Chicago, I'd heard, taken a position with a new company, started fresh, just as I had. The knowledge brought no pain, just a detached acknowledgement of a life now separate from mine. That evening, Autumn and I hosted a small dinner party. Colleagues from work, neighbors, new friends who knew nothing of my past beyond what I'd chosen to share. As conversation and laughter filled the house, I caught Autumn's eye across the room. She smiled, a private communication between us, and I felt that now familiar warmth spread through my chest. We weren't living together yet, though she stayed over often. We were building something careful and deliberate, mindful of the lessons from our pasts. There was no rush, no desperate need to cement what was growing naturally between us. Later, after our guests had departed, we sat on the porch swing, watching fireflies dance in the summer darkness. "Happy?" she asked simply. I considered the question seriously. "Yes," I finally said. Not in the way I once defined happiness, but in a deeper way, more authentic. She nodded, understanding as she always did. "That's the only kind that lasts." I thought about the man I'd been a year ago, shell-shocked, betrayed, uncertain of the future. Walking away had been the hardest decision I'd ever made, but also the most necessary. That silent departure had forced me to rebuild from the foundation up, to examine what I truly wanted rather than what I'd settled for. In the quiet darkness of my new home, with a woman who had earned my trust rather than demanding it, I realized something profound. Sometimes the bravest thing a man can do isn't to stay and fight. It's to recognize when walking away is the only path to preserving his integrity. And in that walking away, I had finally found my way home.